Rain hammered the glass as the numbers bled red across the dashboard. I stared at the transfer logs and felt my breath stall. Ethan Cole said, "He moved everything." Marcus Hale smiled from the boardroom doorway like a calm thief. He glided to the table and tapped the screen. Marcus Hale said, "Contingency. Nothing personal." Jonah Park flinched and whispered that this was a setup. My phone lit with a legal notice that gutted our accounts. Ethan Cole said, "You bled the company to your shell." Marcus Hale said, "You left the door open." The room seemed to tilt as alarms blinked on our servers. A thunderclap swallowed my reply. Ethan Cole said, "I will tear this lie into daylight." Marcus Hale said, "Try." The security lights flickered, and our logo faded to black. The boardroom emptied, but the echo of his words stayed like smoke. Jonah Park said, "We can still contest the transfer." I studied the corporate charter that Marcus rewrote when I was recovering from the last funding round. The clauses curled like traps. Ethan Cole said, "He staged this months ago." My inbox flooded with vendors asking for assurance. The city hummed past midnight, indifferent and loud. Jonah Park said, "We need evidence that ties his shell to our IP." I pictured the first prototype and the promise we sold. Shame pressed on my sternum until it hurt. Ethan Cole said, "We start with the audit logs and the old contracts." Marcus Hale said, "Prepare the announcement," as his PR chief arranged cameras in his penthouse office. He lifted a crystal decanter like a trophy. He would call it a strategic pivot, and I would look like a liability. Ethan Cole said, "He steals and brands it as leadership." The skyline outside cocked 1,000 neon smirks. Jonah Park said, "If he posts, investors will freeze." I opened the shared archive and saw permissions revoked. My stomach turned cold. Ethan Cole said, "He cut my access yet left the shadows lit." I followed the only door he forgot to lock. The locked door opened to a folder of drafts, receipts, and a timeline that predated our last funding call. Ethan Cole said, "He falsified burn reports." Jonah Park said, "That ties him to the shell." I captured hashes and mirrored the drive. The cursor blinked like a metronome for anger. A name surfaced across invoices, Brick Dalton, and the pattern of threats sharpened. Ethan Cole said he hired muscle to push suppliers. The pieces clicked like teeth. The evidence was a map, and the route pointed straight to court and war. Thunder rolled again as I stepped into the alley for air. Maya Trent said, "You look like a man who just met the bottom." I turned and saw the mentor who once warned me about bright promises. She studied my face with steady calm. Ethan Cole said, "He hollowed us out." Maya Trent said, "Revenge burns fast and blinds slow." I told her about the receipts, the shell, and the threats. She nodded at the storm and named the cost. Maya Trent said, "Win clean or lose yourself." The rain cooled my fists, and I chose the harder road. The morning after felt like standing on ruins that once held fire. Ethan Cole said every client vanished overnight. Jonah Park scrolled through a spreadsheet, the red zeros crawling like open wounds. My phone rang with a supplier demanding deposits that no longer existed. Ethan Cole said, "They think we are finished." Outside, sunlight pressed harsh against the blinds, merciless and cold. Jonah Park said he briefed them before the strike. I stared at the office walls, once vibrant with ideas, now sagging with silence. Ethan Cole said, "I built this dream brick by brick, and he gutted it in a night." The hum of the air conditioner felt like mock applause. We met at a diner where the neon buzz hummed louder than our voices. Jonah Park said, "We should report him now." I stirred black coffee that tasted like ash. Ethan Cole said without proof, "We are the fools who scream at shadows." Waitresses moved around us with the rhythm of exhaustion. A family laughed in the corner while my world tilted off its hinges. "Ah," Jonah Park said, "if we wait, he'll erase everything." I tightened my grip on the chipped cup until the ceramic squealed. Ethan Cole said, "Patience cuts deeper than haste. We need the right strike." Rain pattered against the glass, and I caught my reflection, haunted but unbroken. Marcus Hale stood before investors at a hotel ballroom, charisma painted in every gesture. Marcus Hale said, "This pivot saves the future." Applause rose like trained thunder. Behind him, a screen flashed graphs that had been stolen from my drafts. Ethan Cole said, "He markets theft as genius." Jonah Park muttered that the investors swallowed every line. My chest burned as I imagined standing there, stripped of my voice. Marcus Hale said, "Innovation demands courage." The cameras clicked and the headlines wrote themselves. Jonah Park whispered, "By morning, no one will remember your side." I clenched my jaw until it hurt. Back in the co-working loft, Maya Trent leaned against the wall like a sentinel. Maya Trent said, "You watched him steal your crown, and you still hesitate." I pressed my palms to the desk, trembling. Ethan Cole said, "He has every lawyer in his pocket." She studied me with eyes carved from storms. Maya Trent said, "Revenge without strategy is suicide. Evidence is your sword." Jonah Park sighed, weary. The room smelled of dust and burnt coffee. I remembered the files, the name Brick Dalton, the hidden contracts. Ethan Cole said, "I need to find the fracture in his armor." Maya Trent said, "Then start by digging where it hurts most." That night, I drove past the burned-out warehouse where our first prototype once hummed with promise. The windows were shattered, the graffiti loud against the silence. Ethan Cole said, "This is what he left us with." Jonah Park said, "A shell of what we built." I crouched and touched the rusted frame, remembering the nights soldering circuits with blistered hands. Each scar was a chapter in the book Marcus had torn apart. Ethan Cole said, "He thought this loss would break me." The wind howled through broken glass like a dirge. Ethan Cole said, "But this graveyard will be the root of my vengeance." The warehouse echoed with the ghosts of our ambition as I lit a single lamp. Ethan Cole said, "This is where it begins." My voice trembled but carried a new edge. Jonah Park frowned, his laptop flickering blue on the metal table. Jonah Park said, "You want revenge, not justice." I paced the cracked floor and touched the scorched beam, feeling its scars like my own. Ethan Cole said, "He robbed me of everything," and called it strategy. Rain ticked on the tin roof like a clock running out. Jonah Park said, "If you go too far, you'll become him." I met his eyes and felt the line blur. Ethan Cole said, "Then I will walk the edge until I find the truth." We drove through rain-slick streets as neon signs blurred against the windshield. Jonah Park said, "Where are we going?" I gripped the wheel tighter than steel. Ethan Cole said, "To the archives he thinks I forgot." The city bled light like a wound. Tires hissed through puddles, every block a memory of what we lost. Jonah Park muttered about police reports and safer choices. Ethan Cole said, "The law serves the one who pays it most." The silence afterward was heavier than the storm. A truck roared past, shaking the car, but I held steady. Ethan Cole said, "This fight doesn't end in courtrooms. It ends in shadows where truth still breathes." The basement archive smelled of mold and ink, a crypt for forgotten truths. Dust curled in flashlight beams as I opened boxes marked obsolete. Ethan Cole said, "He buried the past here." Jonah Park coughed, covering his nose. My hand brushed folders stained yellow by time. Ethan Cole said, "These contracts predate his shell." I snapped photos as proof, my pulse quickening. Jonah Park said, "If these link him, he's finished." My lamp flickered, shadows stretching like claws. I stacked the papers carefully, each one a weapon hidden in plain sight. Ethan Cole said he thought memory dies, but memory waits. At the docks, the air reeked of salt and oil. A shadow detached from a crane and stepped forward. Brick Dalton, the enforcer. Brick Dalton said, You should have stayed down. His shoulders blocked the floodlight, casting me in shadow. Ethan Cole said, You work for a thief. Brick Dalton said, I work for survival. Jonah Park froze beside me, eyes wide. My fists clenched, but Brick carried weight like a storm. The sound of waves slapped against rusted steel, echoing our silence. Ethan Cole said, Tell him I won't stop. Brick Dalton smirked. Brick Dalton said, Then you'll bleed for it. The night grew colder. Back in the loft, I laid the documents across the table, proof like sharpened blades. Ethan Cole said, These tie him to the theft. Jonah Park said, If we go public, we risk everything. Maya Trent stepped from the shadows with calm eyes. Maya Trent said, Risk is the only path forward. I stared at the papers, each page a piece of his downfall. The rain eased, leaving silence heavy as judgment. Ethan Cole said, He wanted war, and now he has it. Maya Trent said, Then fight with strategy, not rage. My resolve hardened, sharp and unyielding. The game had truly begun. The loft smelled of stale coffee and burnt circuits as the screen glowed endless strings of code. Ethan Cole said, This is the artery he didn't cover. I typed with precision, keys rattling like distant gunfire. Jonah Park said, If the firewall traces us, we're finished. My pulse thundered, sweat beading at my temples, but focus burned sharper than fear. Each line cracked open buried vaults of data, revealing contracts that tied Marcus's empire to offshore shells. Ethan Cole said, He thought burying the past would erase me. Jonah Park leaned in, his face pale. Jonah Park said, These numbers are lethal. The weight of truth pressed on my chest, heavy as a loaded weapon. Ethan Cole said, Weapons are meant to be fired. The storm hadn't eased when Brick Dalton appeared in the alley like a shadow given flesh. His boots splashed in puddles, each step a warning drumbeat. Brick Dalton said, Cole, you're crawling toward a grave. The lamplight carved sharp edges on his scarred face. My breath fogged in the cold rain, fists coiled tight. Ethan Cole said, You guard a liar's throne. Jonah Park shifted nervously, his back nearly pressed to the door, ready to bolt or fight. Brick Dalton smirked, water running down his leather jacket. Brick Dalton said, Loyalty isn't a choice, it's survival. Thunder roared like artillery overhead. My voice cut through the rain like glass. Ethan Cole said, Your survival ends the moment you defend a thief. Silence thickened, broken only by the storm's fury. Back in the loft, the storm beat against the windows, thunder muffling our words. Maya Trent stood at the center, unshaken, her coat dripping rain. Maya Trent said, He sends Dalton because he fears exposure. I slammed the table, papers scattering. Ethan Cole said, Let him fear, I'll tear his empire apart. Her gaze cut deep, colder than the storm. Maya Trent said, Rage without a map is suicide. Jonah Park sat slumped in his chair, exhaustion carving lines into his face. The lamp flickered, shadows stretching like claws across the walls. I stared at the files glowing on the screen, evidence humming like a live wire. Ethan Cole said, These files are the blade I'll use. Maya Trent said, Then sharpen it with patience, not fury. The gala glittered like a cathedral to vanity, every surface polished to blind. Marcus Hale stood at the podium, champagne glass raised high, his grin painted in gold. Marcus Hale said, Innovation demands sacrifice, and I delivered it. Applause thundered, echoing like hollow worship. From the mezzanine shadows, I clenched the railing, watching him bask in stolen glory. Ethan Cole whispered, Every cheer is built on lies. Flashbulbs flared like lightning, capturing his smirk for headlines. Jonah Park leaned close, eyes darting. Jonah Park said, Security's tight, every door guarded. I felt the flash drive heavy in my pocket, its weight like a ticking bomb. Marcus Hale said, This is the future we promised. My jaw tightened. Ethan Cole said, Your future ends with this lie. The neon hum of the print shop was the only sound when the machine began to spit truth in sheets of ink and paper. Ethan Cole said he hid his empire in firewalls, but I'll drag it into daylight. Jonah Park kept watch near the door, shoulders stiff with dread. Maya Trent rested calmly against the counter, her gaze steady. Maya Trent said, "Truth is a blade, but swing it wisely." The printer whirred on, each page a nail in Marcus' coffin. My fingers trembled as I stacked them, the weight heavier than steel. Ethan Cole said by morning his empire crumbles under its own rot. Silence fell, broken only by the final click of the printer. I lifted the pages like a torch against the dark. Ethan Cole said, "The war has begun." The loft filled with silence as I spread the files across the desk. Ethan Cole said, "These tie him to everything: fraud, theft, coercion." Jonah Park leaned in, scanning the invoices with wide eyes. Jonah Park said, "These are dynamite in paper form." Yet my chest tightened as a familiar name appeared on a receipt. Maya Trent. I froze, pulse roaring in my ears. Ethan Cole said, "No, this can't be right." Maya stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Maya Trent said, "I warned you, vengeance blinds." Jonah Park stammered that her name was linked to Marcus's shell company. Maya said nothing, only closing her eyes as if awaiting judgment. The room tilted, and betrayal wore a new face. The storm outside became a chorus of accusations. Ethan Cole said, "You worked with him." Maya's voice was steady, her tone heavy with regret. Maya Trent said, "I helped him once, long ago, before I knew the man he truly was." Jonah Park hissed, his fist slamming the table. Jonah Park said, "You knew and said nothing." Maya's gaze was unwavering. Maya Trent said, "I tried to stop him, but fear silenced me." My hands shook as the truth rewrote everything I trusted. Ethan Cole said, "You told me not to lose myself, yet you lost yourself to him." Her eyes glistened but never broke. The betrayal felt colder than Marcus' theft. Jonah paced like a caged animal, his breath sharp. Jonah Park said, "She could have saved us before this mess began." I swallowed fire, staring at Maya's still figure. Ethan Cole said, "Why tell me to fight clean when your hands were already stained?" Her lips parted, voice carrying the weight of years. Maya Trent said, "Because I saw what revenge made of me. I thought I could guide you to do better." Silence split the room, heavy and suffocating. My eyes traced the evidence again, each line confirming her tie to Marcus's empire. Ethan Cole said, "You're part of the foundation I swore to destroy." My resolve twisted, betrayal poisoning the air. Later that night I walked alone along the river, the city lights fractured across black water. Ethan Cole said, "The mentor was never a guide, only another shadow." Memories replayed of her warnings, now sounding hollow. My reflection on the river shimmered, fractured by raindrops. Jonah Park's words echoed. She let him rise while we drowned. I clenched the flash drive until plastic bent. Ethan Cole said every ally is a mask. The only truth left is war. The city's skyline looked sharp, merciless, each tower a blade. For the first time, I felt entirely alone. The storm inside me raged hotter than the one in the sky. I returned to the loft at dawn, eyes hollow but fire alive in my chest. Jonah Park sat slumped, exhaustion etched deep. He said, "We can't trust anyone now." I placed the stack of printed files on the desk like weapons. Ethan Cole said, "Marcus forged his empire on betrayal, and now betrayal arms me." Maya's chair stood empty, her absence cutting sharper than her presence. I looked at Jonah, my last ally standing, though doubt darkened his gaze. Ethan Cole said, "We march forward with no mentor, no safety net." The morning sun bled through cracked blinds, painting the papers gold. I whispered to myself, the twist was hers, but the end will be mine to write. The warehouse groaned under the weight of silence, as Brick Dalton stepped into the center, fists like wrecking balls at his sides. Brick Dalton said, "This is where your crusade ends, Cole." My pulse hammered, rage and fear colliding inside me. Jonah Park's voice trembled. Jonah Park said, "You can't take him head on." But I moved forward, jaw locked. Ethan Cole said, "This is bigger than fists, Dalton. It's about truth." He lunged, his punch a storm-breaking metal. I staggered but stood tall. Rain leaked through the roof, dripping cold onto cracked concrete. My knuckles split as I fought back, pain fueling fury. Brick Dalton snarled, his loyalty cracking like the beams above us. Dalton's punch sent me crashing against rusted beams, the sound echoing like thunder. My breath caught sharp, ribs aflame. Brick Dalton said, "You're not built for this war." I rose, coughing blood, defiance burning hotter than pain. Ethan Cole said, "I was built from everything he destroyed." Jonah Park shouted, his voice breaking. Jonah Park said, "Stop this before it kills you both." But Dalton hesitated, his eyes flickering with doubt. My fists trembled, but so did his resolve. Ethan Cole said, "He uses you, like he used us all." For the first time, Dalton faltered, the storm inside him colliding with the truth he tried to bury. Maya Trent entered through the warehouse doors, her face a storm of regret and steel. Maya Trent said, "Enough. He's not your enemy, Dalton." The room froze, even the rain seemed to hold its breath. I glared at her, betrayal still raw in my veins. Ethan Cole said, "You lost the right to guide me." Her voice cracked, but she stood firm. Maya Trent said, "I lost to Marcus once. Don't let him win by breaking you now." Dalton's fists lowered slowly, his chest rising with ragged breaths. Jonah Park whispered, "She's right. We can't kill each other while Marcus laughs." My rage fought my reason, both screaming in my skull. The choice hung like a blade. The confrontation shifted as Marcus Hale's voice boomed from hidden speakers. Marcus Hale said, "My empire doesn't crumble because children play war." His laughter spilled through the walls, venom dripping with arrogance. I clenched my fists, rage igniting anew. Ethan Cole said, "You're nothing without shadows to hide in." Marcus Hale said, "And you're nothing without your anger." Screens flickered alive on the walls, showing doctored footage painting me as the villain. Jonah Park gasped, his face pale. Jonah Park said, "He's turning the world against you." Maya's eyes narrowed, her voice steel. Maya Trent said, "Then show them the real truth now." My blood boiled, but my purpose sharpened. I ripped the flash drive from my pocket and thrust it into the terminal. Ethan Cole said, "Here is your empire's true face." Files exploded onto the screens, contracts, transfers, threats, every poisoned root. Marcus's voice wavered through the speakers. Marcus Hale said, You don't understand." The lies unraveled in neon light, his empire bleeding across the screens for all to see. Jonah Park shouted with triumph. Jonah Park said, "He is exposed." Brick Dalton lowered his head, shame cutting deeper than fists. Maya's eyes glistened with vindication. The warehouse thundered with the sound of collapsing illusions. Ethan Cole said, "Your mask is gone, Marcus, and the world will see the thief beneath." The warehouse screens dimmed as the final file burned into the system, leaving silence louder than thunder. Ethan Cole said, "The truth is out." Jonah Park sat on the floor, exhausted but alive. Brick Dalton leaned against the beam, his fists unclenched, the weight of loyalty collapsing. Marcus Hale's voice sputtered through the speakers, desperate and broken. Marcus Hale said, "You think this will stop me?" My chest heaved, each breath heavy with victory and loss entwined. Ethan Cole said, "You're finished. The Empire is ash now." The rain outside softened, as if the storm itself had surrendered. The morning light broke through broken warehouse windows, painting the dust gold. Jonah Park said, "We did it. But at what cost?" His voice cracked with exhaustion. I gazed at the shattered glass, reflecting the sunrise. Ethan Cole said, "Every empire falls, but scars remain." Maya Trent stood silent at the doorway, her face carved by regret. She whispered, "Maya Trent said, I failed once, but today you didn't." My throat tightened, unsure if her words brought comfort or poison. The smell of rain mixed with rust as the city stirred awake beyond the river. The fight was over, but the battle inside me raged still. By midday, we gathered in the loft where it all began. The papers lay spread across the table, no longer weapons but relics of a war fought. Jonah Park said, "The investors have pulled from him. The news won't stop." I nodded, though the victory felt hollow. Ethan Cole said, "Justice is never clean, only sharp." Brick Dalton lingered at the window, his broad frame heavy with shame. Brick Dalton said, "I gave my fists to the wrong man." I studied him, unsure if forgiveness lived in me. Maya Trent said, "Rebuilding starts with choice, not rage." Her words lingered, fragile yet piercing, as I faced the ashes of what once was. That evening, I stood at the grave of our first prototype, the warehouse ruins that birthed both dream and downfall. Jonah Park said, "It's strange to mourn a building." I touched the rusted beam, scars still sharp. Ethan Cole said, "It was more than steel, it was hope." The wind whispered through the broken walls like a requiem. Maya Trent placed a hand on my shoulder, silent, offering presence instead of answers. Brick Dalton stayed back, unable to approach, his silence louder than apology. The sun bled into the horizon, fire fading to ash. Ethan Cole said, "This is where it began, and where I choose to rise again." Night fell again, but this time the storm was gone. I stood alone on a rooftop overlooking the city, its lights alive with possibility. Ethan Cole said, he thought betrayal would bury me, but it became my fire. The wind tugged at my torn coat as the skyline stretched infinite. Jonah Park's laughter echoed faint below, the sound of survival. Maya Trent's shadow lingered in my thoughts, her warning a scar I'd never lose. Ethan Cole said, "I have seen truth, betrayal, and war, and I remain." My final words cut into the night like a vow. Ethan Cole said, "This city will remember my rise, not my fall." Silence answered, powerful and eternal.